You're listening to the B-Town Breakdown, where we talk about life, art, local news, and all that jazz with your host, Alia Sinclair. Tune in for a new show every Friday at 106.5 KQWZ LP-FM, South King County.
Hello and welcome to this week's show of the B-Town Breakdown, where we talk about art, life, local news, and all that jazz. I'm your host, Alia Sinclair, and today we're going to kick off with a segment I call Food for Thought. Recently, I was speaking with a group of creatives about the challenges they have been facing in their art practice. Many times, some iteration of how can I justify making art came up. These artists were dealing with feelings of guilt about spending time working on their art when there were chores to do, or spending money on getting a new studio after they moved away from their last one. There was struggle about feeling like there had to be some concrete return on investment for these expenditures on their art to justify their existence. This point of view makes sense when you consider we are born into a capitalist environment. From early childhood, we understand that to create something for nothing is an economic disaster. That the only way to get ahead or make something of ourselves and build wealth is to streamline a means of production and sell at a profit. But art, as a being, has no economic motive. It is not concerned with profit margins or returns on investment. It doesn't operate in that kind of currency. And most artists that try and force it to have quite a miserable time. Art is concerned with creation for its own sake. It's concerned with describing existence to itself through the use of human vessels. Art is never going to care about deadlines or dirty dishes or the electric bill. She cares only that the artist is available and willing to create. Can artists make money? Of course they can. Should they be shamefaced about the pursuit of money? Of course not. Art may not have a physical body to feed or pay bills, but we do. And you are no less an artist if you commodify and successfully sell your art for profit. But you are also not a failure if you don't. And that's the point. Your art, the time and expense it takes to make, is worth making for its own sake, even if you never see a dime from it. It's counter to everything you have been taught about the value of a thing, but it is nevertheless true. So, keep creating, whatever you do. If the money follows, welcome it. And if it doesn't, create anyway.
You're listening to the B-Town Breakdown, where we talk about life, art, local news, and all that jazz with your host, Alia Sinclair, at 106.5 KQWZ LP-FM, South King County.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Alia Sinclair, and you're listening to the B-Town Breakdown, where we talk about life, art, local news, and all that jazz. Today I'm here with the conductor and artistic director of the Northwest Symphony Orchestra, Anthony Spain. Hello, and thanks for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So, to all the good people out in Radio Land, I actually talked to Anthony, what was that? Has it been a month already?
Yeah,
we had our
something
interview.
like that, yeah.
We had a great interview. We talked about all sorts of things. I was so excited to broadcast to the people. And it turns out that we had audio issues here in the studio and it did not record. We kind of thought maybe it wouldn't because there was some weirdness at the beginning of the interview, and it turns out worst case scenarios. So Anthony very graciously agreed to come back to do this interview again. And I'm mentioning this because we will possibly be referencing a conversation we have already had in the course of this conversation, and so I thought I would mention it and also make sure your audio drivers are up to date because that can cause problems. So now back to the story of the day. I would love to know, Anthony Spain, your musical background and how you came to work with the Northwest Symphony Orchestra.
What a story! As most artists have a long story. It starts usually in childhood, and falling in love with music or whatever art form they're working with, and being exposed to various wonderful art forms, styles, musical styles. So it runs anywhere from simply listening to music that my parents played and being introduced to symphonies and the wonderful music of Brahms, Beethoven, since I can remember, to hearing the great military bands of the East Coast, because I grew up near Washington, D.C., and some fantastic concert bands as well as jazz ensembles. And it's pretty typical, growing up in America is a great place because you're, as a trumpet player, which I was at the time, you're playing pretty well every style of music, jazz, classical. And I think that's one of the great things about this country is, some places kind of pigeonhole you, but in America, you have this wonderful opportunity of becoming exposed to lots of styles. So as well, trumpet, I got into singing with various choirs and was in a wonderful vocal jazz group that got nominated for a Grammy. We lost Manhattan Transfer, if you remember who that group is. But it was such an incredible experience in college with them. And eventually conducting. I was an undergrad and started taking conducting classes, and it's I just love this. And so from there, it progressed.
It progressed. I love
slowly,
that.
But there, yeah.
Slowly but surely. Well, I was wondering if you could sort of demystify the art of conducting for us, because for a lot of people, there are tons of memes and there are tons of jokes about like, what are you even doing up there? And for a lot of people, their only point of reference are movies like Tar or Maestro more recently, or the show Mozart in the Jungle. I know we talked last time that you hadn't seen any of those. Probably better that you don't. Your professionalism might be like, it is nothing like that whatsoever. But give us the inside scoop of what it is that you do.
Yeah, that's such a great party question. You're at a party and someone goes, do you really make any difference up there? And the answer is yes. But what and how? Well, a lot of the work that we do actually goes in rehearsing. And as in any performance ensemble, it's getting that ensemble ready to perform at the highest technical. And I also add, as well as emotional, spiritual level. And so that's the majority of the process. And then, of course, you have the performance and all that goes into that as well. But there is an amazing amount of listening that a conductor has to do. You have to basically take in all the information coming at you. And you're sort of like this massive radar system that scans the orchestra, and you analyze every second what you're hearing that's coming back to you. And if you'd like to hear something different or what needs to be fixed or something stylistically that you'd like to change, all of those things go into conducting. And then as far as communicating with the orchestra, what a conductor really does is communicates really a fraction a second ahead of what's happening in the music, so the musicians can react to what's coming up, not just rhythmically and with tempo, though that's very much the base, so an orchestra feels very secure as you lead them through, say, some tricky rhythmic sections, but anything from style, type of sound, note length, phrasing, balance, all of these things are happening in every split second. And that's such a wonderful thing. But it's in a sense, I think, so complex that there is a sort of mystique that goes with it. And it's easy to understand why people don't understand what conducting is all about.
It feels very sort of ethereal. Like a lot of these things you are conducting and controlling are invisible. The energies and the interpretations of the piece and the communication that happens therein with all the musicians.
That's such an interesting thing that you mentioned. We were talking about this before too, that one conductor can get up in front of a group of people, be conducting one work, and another conductor gets up and conducts the same work with the same group, and it sounds differently. Why does it sound differently? And there is that, that's I think where the mystification comes in.
Yeah.
That there is something that we as conductors communicate with an orchestra, and each individual is different as far as what that's communicated. And I think that's also something a conductor really has to think about is, what are they communicating to an orchestra? Obviously, you want to be energetic, you want to have vision, but you don't want to create stress. You don't want to create fear. You don't want to create, negativity within the orchestra. Your basic job is just on those simple questions we'll call is to create an atmosphere where the best music making can come through.
What do you do in the rehearsal room where it's just like you can just feel everyone's just frazzled? Like maybe they're like got there a little late, there was like traffic, and the energy is just like not there, and it's affecting the music. How do you deal with a situation like that as a conductor?
Yeah, and that's a great question because every conductor at every level, whether you're conducting an elementary school group right up through professional, has that to deal with. Hopefully, as we become more professional, work with professionals, we have to think about that less. But we are human, and humans make mistakes, and humans go through different changes of emotions, and so. There is. That's part of conducting is in a sense reading the room, and seeing where musicians are at a specific point. If it's something where it's getting late in a rehearsal, for example, maybe musicians are getting tired. That's where I'll generally run things a little bit more. A lot of the heavy weight or heavy work is done up front while people are fresh. We're really getting into the music and. Fixing a lot of details. And it's a good idea, say at the end of the rehearsal to finish with something that's uplifting or, in a sense, picks people up a little bit and then finishes the rehearsal on a positive note.
Yeah, I love that. Sends them out into the world, a little pep in their step.
Exactly, yes.
So you've talked about like all of the I guess interpretation of the piece, like the tone here and the style here. Are those decisions you make beforehand, like when you're just looking at the music, the physical music, you make those decisions and then you conduct them accordingly? Or do you kind of feel it out when you're in rehearsal? I'm like, you know what, this part actually needs a little something, something.
Answer is most of it happens ahead of time, and the majority of a conductor's life is a very solitary one, sitting at your desk, usually just quietly taking in a score, and you read it like a book, and you make numerous decisions. There's so many that if you take an average symphony, for example, it's never been performed the same way twice. There's that many variables in it that it'll never be duplicated. So you're making all these decisions ahead of time. And then when you show up to, say, the first rehearsals, players obviously expect you to be prepared, but also have a vision for what you'd like to hear in this piece, stylistically, how you're going to shape the phrase, how you're going to look at the piece on a macro level. So and each micro decision you make affects the macro. So you have to, in a sense, always go back between the two and say, okay, if I do this musically here, if I take a little bit more time here, or I ask for something here, how's that going to affect the overall picture of the movement or the piece? So these are constant questions that a conductor asks themselves.
Well, it's interesting because how many people are in your symphony orchestra?
It's about 65.
Okay, so like you tell 65 people, here's what I'm going for. 65 musicians will interpret that 65 different ways. So is there ever like any sort of cacophony that happens there with the difference of interpretation?
That's a great question, and that's a lot of actually good conducting is will 65 people get it? So there isn't that. Wait, what did he say or she say? What do they want there? Amazingly, I find that if I sing to an orchestra what I'd like, that is usually very effective than if I try to explain something and say, I like this here. But if I actually sing it to them, it's, we got it.
Yeah.
And it's fixed and we moved on.
Because they communicate musically. So that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. You said something about reading the score like a book. And that is fascinating to me because I am a musician and I play many instruments, but I play by ear, and I've tried many, many times to learn to read music and to varying degrees of success. But I was recently like delving in again to the internet of like, how do people do this? And like looking up how people read music, and people were saying that they literally read it like words. Do you hear the tones in your head then? So like you're reading a score, can you hear every part in your head as you're reading it?
That's the idea.
Oh man,
yes, and
that's cool.
Now with recordings, recordings can really help you get there quickly as far as internalizing a piece. And I do like to listen to a variety of recordings because you get different ideas too about how different conductors have approached pieces. And of course now that's easier to do than ever,
right? Because
you can find pretty well anything on YouTube or wherever online. For conductors, before the modern age, we'll call it, they really had to internalize it, say, on a piano or, and the live opportunities they got to hear were more reduced, but that also meant that there was a lot of great live music happening, and that happening through history.
Yeah.
But I, in general, like to just sit there and really look at it and internalize it as I'm reading the score at my desk, and also in that quietness. As you can imagine, with all this going on, you really need to have immense focus.
Oh, yeah.
So for every conductor, that's different. But for most of us to have absolute silence and just be in a space, a time of day that your brain's really working, to take that time for score study, and intense score study is always, it's such a pleasure.
How many years of studying music does it take to get to that point where you can just read the notes and hear them, especially?
It depends on every musician, and everyone is different on that. So there's no set answer. And
that makes sense.
And as a conductor, too, for every conductor, at least there's one easy answer. And I heard this recently from a great conductor, is the challenges and the growing never stops. There's too much music, and there's too many variables in the career, and people being human beings, issues, and what you're working with changes from day to day. Obviously, experience can be relied on after a while to see you through and be a real aid in what's coming up in each rehearsal. But that's one of the exciting things about the career, is you never stop learning.
That sounds amazing. There were two questions that came up as we were talking. One is, you said listening to recordings of a piece, and I'm wondering if after time you recognize a certain conductor's sort of stamp stylistically. Can you recognize, oh, so-and-so conducted this by the way the piece is structured?
That's yes. And, when I was in college, I remember starting that process. And, of course, this is when we didn't have videos, et cetera. And I would hear a record, and I would give myself a little test like, okay, I hear this symphony. Do I know what symphony it is? And I remember starting that as an undergraduate and getting pretty good at it, and hearing a symphony and saying, oh, that's the London Symphony, or that's Chicago, or that's
so
the
cool.
Berlin Philharmonic.
Yeah.
And so that, in a sense, was a kind of a fun education exercise to train my ears and to say, okay, what am I hearing, and what do I like, or what would I do differently? And so it was very valuable in that
Invaluable, I'd imagine. Yeah, like hearing that, recognizing it, and then knowing, because they say, you got to know the rules to break the rules. I mean, like, they're doing it this way. What would I do? I love that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great thing for all artists. Yeah, you got to know the rules to break them. If you're a visual artist, you can't paint the Mona Lisa without having great technique. And that's true for any artist.
And I forget who said it, but the creativity thrives in boundaries or something like that. Like, kind of, sometimes you need the boundaries of the rules to even kickstart the creativity at all, because if it's just like, okay, compose anything, it's like, suddenly there's blue screen, what is music?
Yeah, that's so true. I was just reading something on Leonard Bernstein, since there's a movie out on him, where he was talking, and he gave these such great educational programs, and he was talking about, when you're a composer, when you make certain decisions as a composer, that means you can't make others, that you are set in a course of direction. But those boundaries, as you mentioned, can be very helpful into making whatever you're working with such an incredible piece.
Yeah, I could go off on a rabbit trail there, because I've thought a lot about how I read once in the prologue to a book that the word decide has the same root word as the word homicide or suicide, which is to end. So to decide is to end other possibilities, because you have decided. And that was like, how can I ever decide anything then? Because I'm killing all possibility. But then you can get into the philosophical idea of like parallel universes and possible worlds. And so it's like, well, maybe there's a world in which I decided something else and I didn't kill it completely. That's a rabbit trail, but it's also true in music. You had talked about this being such a cool career. You never stop learning. And something I have thought about almost every day since the last time we talked is the fact that you created this orchestra. I can't get over it. You were like, you got out of school. You're like, I like this conducting thing. I need people to conduct. So you just made the Northwest Symphony Orchestra and have been doing it for 25 years. Tell the people how do you go about building something like this?
Well, I think it sounds, thank you for that compliment. It sounds in some ways very unique, but I think the process that I went through is very much what I think probably most people go through with. There you are in university, you're getting a degree, you want to get hired somewhere, but you have no experience. And so most people within their respective careers get creative in building their resume and getting the experience so that they will get noticed by, say, a company or whatever job they want to be in. But maybe mine's a little unique in the sense that, yes, to found an orchestra is
a thing. Yeah,
and it takes an immense amount of work. I basically, when I was a doctorate program here at the UW, I got on a phone one summer. And I just spent hours on the phone calling people and say, would you like to play? And it's great to be in your 20s and naive. If I knew what I knew now, I'm not sure I would have done it. But, you have incredible energy and vision and focus. And, if you're an artist in your 20s, you are usually very driven. That is what you've got to do, so you do it. And that's certainly where I was. And and if a person said no, I said, well, do you know someone else? And so you get very creative about creating your own possibilities. And the orchestra at that time, it was really just starting up as kind of a student group. And that's happened for a lot of conductors, including some incredibly famous conductors like Simon Rattle. They just got their fellow students together and started making music. But from that, you get incredibly valuable experience, and one thing just led to another, and the orchestra has been on a continuous growth process in the last 37 years, and just amazed even, now it still gets better.
Yeah.
And the music making keeps getting at a higher level, and the orchestra enjoying working with each other. It's so fantastic to see.
Yeah, what an accomplishment. I mean, just the fact that it's gone so long is just a huge inspiration. And I keep repeating it. People are going to get tired of me saying it. If there's one message from the B-Town Breakdown, it is that artists can make their own way. I mean, I've talked to so many different people. I was just speaking to last weekend to a professional musician who founded the Roadhouse, a performance art venue down in SeaTac. And just the incredible things he's done, but it's the same sort of thing. It's, he was saying, I think I asked him what he'd tell young people or something like that, and he was like, you have to take yourself, you have to respect yourself as the thing. You are a musician, and you are a professional, and you deserve to get paid, and you deserve to do this, and part of it is just that mindset of, I am an artist, and I'm going to be one, full stop. You're like, I'm a conductor, I'm going to conduct. And here you are, you've built this career as a conductor, you've built this incredible group of musicians and giving that music to the community, and it's just really awesome. So I will repeat again for anyone listening.
That's right.
Make your own way. It's not easy. That's the kicker. I think it's a really difficult road, but a fascinating one. I mean, endlessly interesting, endlessly creative because you have to build it as you go.
Yes.
But possible.
Yes, and that process, it can be difficult at the time, but looking back on it, I realize how valuable it was in every way. With everything I had to learn, it's not just music, but how you relate to people and all the business side of an orchestra and raising money and everything that goes into that. And so in that way, it's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah. You said, oh man, I've lost myself and where we were. Oh yes, your background as a musician, how has that informed your work as a conductor, being a musician first?
Well, as a musician, you learn the basics of what you need to as a conductor. You learn, of course, musical style, but music theory, music history, all of that goes in to being an informed conductor. And so as an undergraduate, at the time being a trumpet major and going through all of that, you're taking classes with everybody else, and at that point it's not too specialized. But all of that information is incredibly valuable as you become, or each one of us became more specialized, in my case
Right.
being a conductor.
Yeah. I'm a professional writer, and I found that as I kind of got up into content management roles, I was thinking like writer for like this is what I wish I'd had from content managers or editors. Was there that kind of thing as well? Like what you'd like to see in a conductor? Did that help at all?
Yes, and I really enjoyed the process. I think a conductor learns more or the most when they're actually at a live rehearsal.
That makes
And
sense.
so there were a few summers I would just hang out in London.
Nice.
And some, in your 20s, I had some very generous people that would say, here's our flat, we're going to
Yeah.
be gone for a few weeks, you can just stay. And so I basically went to rehearsal after rehearsal and heard so many great orchestras, because London is not just London. I heard the Berlin Philharmonic for the first few times coming through, and other great groups like that. And then here in America, just going in and sitting on rehearsals in various orchestras throughout the country has been very valuable.
Yeah, man, what an amazing opportunity. Just to be in one city and get to hear so much music from all over. That's incredible. I'm so glad you got that opportunity. So I'm seeing from my notes here that I said something about you doing this for 25 years. You've actually been doing it since 1987. That's closer to 37.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
37 years. So what has changed in that time in anything that has been, technology and the way music is kind of shared and taken in and marketed, like all of that has changed. Has there been any real significant jumps that you're like, this has changed, the whole ball game? Or is the world of conducting stayed more or less the same?
It's changed in a lot of ways. You mentioned marketing, first of all. Yeah, that's changed immensely. And I don't feel that's actually a strong, it's not so much in my wheelhouse. Back when I started, Seattle Times, King FM was great, and that pretty well covered it. And so I'm very fortunate that I have now, things have gotten much more complex. A wonderful PR committee around me that is fantastic with interacting with the public. So right there's a growth, because back when I was starting, I didn't have that. Now I have this wonderful people that help. And with all of that. But in some ways, the success of the orchestra was also, you mentioned change and seeing where change was going to happen. We were on the forefront of, I think, a major change in orchestras, and that is really getting into the communities and going back to the 1990s, becoming an orchestra that was about the community. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, right off, it was supporting local musicians and composers. And back then, a lot of orchestras were still very much in a certain repertoire mode, and all of that's changed now, but we were on the forefront of, in a sense, programming new music by local composers and making that a central part of our mission,
Yes.
which is not original now, but it was original back then.
Yeah.
So I was asked to speak at many conferences like the League of American Orchestras, National Conference a few times about this. And so we've performed to date, I think it's over 160 compositions just by local composers,
Yes.
about 80 world premieres.
Yes.
And every subscription concert we have a local composer, and some we've come back to, which is, I think, really important, because often you can get a first world premiere of a composition, but is that composition performed again? And so I view that as part of our mission, to keep a piece once it's been introduced to the world.
Keep it alive.
Yeah, keep it alive. And but that led to some unique opportunities back in the 90s where we had some CDs that were recorded that were we just took a chance on, and they were picked up by international labels, which was fantastic. And that led to good reviews, which led to furthering the orchestra's we'll say the awareness of the public and some better funding, and even a mention in a Wall Street Journal article. So that was all that vision back then of having that was, I think, a key to the success of this orchestra. And it kind of goes back, actually, I had a business person on my doctoral committee, because my dissertation, I thought, okay, I'm going to start an orchestra. At least I'm going to write a dissertation about how to do it.
Smart.
I'm spending so much time with this, so let me
Very
do that.
smart.
So I'm just so grateful to this person that came on as my committee, because he sat me down. He said, look, there's lots of orchestras out there. So just simply in a business context, how are you going to be different? And that immediately got me thinking from a very early age that, okay, yes, how are we going to be different? What are we going to do for this community?
Yeah.
And how are we going to be viable for this community? And that was the beginning of a process that has just now really grown to a wonderful level with the orchestra.
Yeah. Wow, that's a tremendous gift early on to be able to kind of think in those terms and be innovative and have it pay off so spectacularly is amazing. And I had the pleasure of being at your Valentine's show where you were premiering a piece by a composer.
Yeah,
and
Kari Medina, yeah.
Yes.
She's a wonderful composer.
Excellent. There was a interactive component where the audience got to chant a little and feel involved. And I think we talked some about that last time, about the mission to make classical music in particular feel more accessible and more help people feel more involved, help it feel like it's something we can grasp and enjoy and be around, because sometimes things like that and fine art are sort of gatekept, or there's a mentality at least that isn't for me or I can't reach it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was also a central part of our mission right from the very beginning, was, in a sense, I wanted anybody coming in, walking through the doors, to go, this is where I should be. This is fantastic. So how do we create that atmosphere? And so from a very, really the beginning of the orchestra, the history, I began speaking to the audiences. And my goal is always to sort of, in a sense, kind of create for lack of a better word, sort of a fireside chat environment that they feel comfortable. They can sit back on their couch and enjoy the music and take that in. And of course, when you're working with local composers, what's great is they're alive. They're not dead, so you can interview them and say, what went into this Kari? Why did you compose this? And so that in that way, the music comes alive for people. And then by removing that barrier, demystifying all of that, and making it accessible, but in a way that they can relate to the composers and music, to say, oh, this composer's not different than me.
Yeah.
Or, okay, that composer wrote great music, but I had no idea they were going through that incredible struggle in their life when they wrote this, and this is what happened because of that. And I'm just taking sort of one example here, but it's making the music real for people.
Definitely, yeah. I really appreciated the intros, both you and the other composer. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name.
Yeah, Kari Medina, yeah.
Did before the pieces, because it creates that context, and you can listen for the things that the composer was, trying to communicate through the piece. It's like, it really does bring it to life in a whole new way. If you're not someone who has, the ability to read the score and hear, I'm still fascinated by that. I know, and to anyone who reads music, it's like, yeah, duh, that's what it's about. But for someone who plays by ear and I can never feel like they were anything but black blobs. They never came alive for me.
Yeah.
And so the fact that some people can do that, I can't get over.
Well, and it's fantastic to have a great ear and play by ear too. That's a wonderful skill in itself, and I think all musicians should have that skill as well. And going back to Kari, that you mentioned the interactive. That's another thing. Of course, we're hearing from audiences that they want now to feel like they're part of the experience. So how do we do that? And with Kari's piece, it was wonderful having the audience sing with us, and I was really impressed with how they sang.
Yes, and it worked really well.
Yeah, it did. We actually were, for those of you that weren't there, we kind of had a little rehearsal with the audience and said, okay, you're going to sing along in the middle of this, and as soon as they sang, it's like a natural choir out there.
Yeah.
They're absolutely fantastic, and so it went really well.
That must have been cool for you, I'm realizing, because all of those voices would have been coming from behind you, so it would kind of been like this haunting, little chant from the background, and then you're getting the music from the front. It would have been very interesting. And I mean, it was very cool to be in the midst of it as well. So just a very cool thing to do.
Well, and that's in a sense the penultimate moment for conductors, is when you're in the middle of this sound in a performance. And I think the largest performance I ever conducted was the Mahler Second Symphony, and I think it was 260 people on stage.
Oh, wow.
And to have that sound between a massive choir and an orchestra coming at you Oh, what a gift.
Yeah.
I feel incredibly blessed that I get to do this. I mean, yes, it's an amazing amount of work that people never see, and there's a lot of parts of it that are not this, mountaintop experience, but they are the mountaintop experiences, and it's fantastic in that way.
It's those moments that you're like, this is why I do this. After a frustrating day of admin or whatever it is.
Exactly.
This is why. So if there is that young creative out there, 20-something, fresh out of school, like, I'm going to change the world. They've got that vim and vigor and that delightful naivete. Specifically, if they're striving for a musical life, what's your advice for them? What do you say?
Well, I think probably the advice is the same probably for any artist out there is, yes, it's hard, and you know that. And so how do you approach that? And I think there's several keys. We were talking about this a little before in our last interview, and I remember saying be patient. And then I remember walking out of here going, I could have said other things. And I think, this sort of the carpe diem, you mentioned sort of having a philosophy that you live by. The carpe diem, seize the day, what you can do in that day. And it can be something as simple as who you meet. I've been amazed at things that have happened with the orchestra or in my career that had absolutely nothing to do with musicians I've met or in a musical context. For example, we perform in a wonderful children's hospital benefit concert each year in Benaroya Hall. How did that happen? Well, I played on a soccer team. And the manager happened to be heading up the business side that year, and we got to chatting, and the rest is history. But for most artists, if you talk to them, their lives are full of those. It seems at the time, events that, meeting people that may not lead to anything or be part of your career, but can take off and be an important part of actually how you develop as an artist. I remember there was a conductor we heard when I was a student. I always remember this, where he was conducting in a small orchestra outside of New York City. And the music director of the New York Philharmonic and I think the manager were walking through the mailroom. And they were talking, we need a conductor for an education concert. And the mail person who was doing all the mail for the Philharmonic and in that building overheard them. He goes, I know a conductor. I just heard him last weekend out in just outside of New York. You should check this person out. They did, and he conducted the New York Philharmonic. All because someone in the mailroom spoke up.
Yeah.
So, it's trying to keep these things in perspective, because, of course, it can be very frustrating, and it can take a long time to go to get your career going for any artist.
Yeah.
So it's being patient, seizing the day, meeting people, enjoying the process, and then I think I'd say the last thing is, and this would be sort of more philosophical, but live your life. It's not just about our art. It's not just. We don't want to turn it into some, sort of idol, and that's all we think about.
Yeah.
That life has so many wonderful things to offer us outside of the art. So it's helping to keep all of that in balance. And I think when that's in balance, too, it also helps us keep a frame of reference about the struggles that we go through as artists, and having good friends around us and people we can trust and good critics. I think that's something actually I think probably is particularly important today, is that artists have always enjoyed interacting. And somehow I think today there's sort of this idea that the artist is there on sort of an island. And I think I don't like that idea at all, because it's not historical in any art form.
It's true.
Artists have always found people they can talk to their ideas about and can rely on to be, I'd say, healthy critics. And that's so important today in our crazy world of non-healthy critics, whether it's online, that if there's ever a time that we need good support around us and critics we can trust, because I think it's never a question of, do you have critics in your life or not? The answer should be yes, but the key is, who are those critics?
Right.
Because we all need to learn, we all need to be open to growth and be able to hear things that we may not necessarily want to hear or like to hear. So it's important to hear those from people that we can really trust, that have a lot of great insight, but a lot of that have our best best intentions in mind.
Yes, I read somewhere it's like never trust the criticism of someone you wouldn't go to for advice or something like that. I think it has to do with that trust element of like they really, the people who do have your best interest in mind. They're not just trying to cut you down or, be a troll, as they say on the web.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think there's really an important thing you said there too, to the balance, because it really can eat your life, art, or the pursuit of your goal as an artist, and to really zoom out and be like, there is more to this, but also your whole life is also a work of art. It's just the experience of the food that you eat and the people you love and the sun on your face. And if you're like shutting out all of that in pursuit of this narrow idea of what art is, and what you should be achieving as an artist, you really lose so much of the experience of life.
I love that. Your life is a work of art. That's fantastic. It points to that balance, and we have so many interests in our lives and people that are so important, and that's the core of life.
Exactly. And it feeds into the art. I mean, I remember in my early 20s just hating having to have a day job. But then I realized, if I opened myself up and I paid attention, endless, especially I worked at this huge used bookstore in San Diego, endless inspiration in the clientele and the conversations and, just the atmosphere. There were 2 bookstore cats in there. It was the sun coming through the windows and hitting a sleeping cat. It was, the smell of the dusty books that have been up there for 20 years. It's the regulars and their eccentric stories and all of this. Just like, oh, I kind of get it. I started understanding that the whole world is just kind of this mosaic of creativity and oddness and gloriousness, that it can all feed each other. And that if you are in a day job that you don't perhaps prefer, that can be a perspective that helps you get through, what you need to do, is that this too is art in its own way, and it feeds the art and the idea that there really are no accidents. Like you're saying, the people you meet and the people who overhear and the people who speak up. Even, I comforted myself when we lost our first interview. It's like, you know what? There's probably a reason. If there's no such thing as accidents, maybe there's a reason. And
we get a second take at it.
We'll get a second take, and we'll do it again. So I would love, before we run out of time here, to talk about what the orchestra has coming up. I know that there's a couple of really cool shows I'd like the people to know.
Well, going back to, again, our mission of really being an orchestra for this community, we have some wonderful partnerships. We have a concert this weekend with Choral Sounds Northwest here in Burien. We've been involved with them for many, many years, and supporting them supporting us. And so it's been great to be part of that here in the South End. Coming up, though, on Friday, April 26th in Benaroya Hall, we're partnering with Washington Trails Association. And they have an incredible photo competition each year. It gets about 3,000 entries, so we're going to take about 400 of those. They're just finishing those now. We have Adrian Wired who's putting those together for us. And what will happen is the orchestra will perform music with these incredible visuals happening in Benaroya. And it's a great place to do it. I think their projector is something like over $100,000.
Oh, my goodness.
So the clarity that you'll see on these images is just amazing. And but, there's a wonderful marriage between music and nature. And, we're starting with Beethoven, for example, and that's such a great example. But, Beethoven himself, when he had a mental block, he would go out walking in nature and it would free him up. And how many great works came from Beethoven because of nature? So I thought we'd introduce the concert with that composer, and then there's several others that we have. We'll finish with John Williams, of course, the famous Hollywood composer. Who would be great in any age, by the way.
Yes.
I mean, he is such an amazing composer. And so Friday, April 26th, and if people are interested in coming, they can go to benaroyahall.org and check that out. It's called Crescendo is the name of that concert. And but great to partner. Washington Trails Association has been a wonderful organization to partner with. We've been really enjoying the process as we go through this and preparing for it for over a year.
Wow.
And in fact, ticket sales we've already sold, I think it's coming up to 1,000 tickets, and we're five weeks away still.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
it's really, there's been a lot of interest already on that.
Yeah, so hop on it if you're interested. It sounds like it's going to be a great show. I'm trying to imagine just these awesome images of nature with Beethoven, and it's going to be an awesome show. Well, to wrap up, the last question I ask people is, do you have a personal mantra or motivational quote that you live by?
That Carpe Diem is a good one.
Carpe Diem, seize the day.
Yeah, and I, as you get older, I think you learn even more what it means to live in each moment. And there have been times in my life where I've not done that well at all.
Yeah.
And that's been, part of that process of seeing the miracle, in a sense, in each day, in each moment. And as you said, there are times where life seems to be dull, or you have to sort of do the administration side of it. But as an artist, what we get to do is truly spectacular. And, with everything going on in the world right now, and with just coming out of COVID, too, has made me just, as a person, appreciate this incredible gift of what we get to do as artists.
Yeah.
When you have it taken away from you, which it was for a large part of COVID at least. We were creating through COVID, but we couldn't do it in the usual ways that we sometimes were used to. That when you finally come back, it's, this really is incredible. But again, with everything going on in the world right now too, it's we're truly blessed to be able to do this, and to be artists, and to live in a country where you can have the freedom to do this, and that people care about, the arts in an important way. And so, it's seize the day.
Seize the day. Seize the day. I love that. I need to put Carpe Diem up somewhere in my office for those slow days. Like, even this day I shall seize.
Yes.
Well, Anthony Spain, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much again for coming back and talking to us. And thank you for joining us today on the B-Town Breakdown. You can join us next week on Friday at 6 p.m. at 106.5 KQWZ LPFM, or listen to playbacks podcast style on the Highline Heritage Museum's YouTube channel.
Tune in for a new show every Friday at 106.5 KQWZ LPFM, South King County.